Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today it is Poetry Thursday, a fun day to talk about all the strange and unusual poetry out there, and I have a bit of a doozy for you today. Today's poem is all about dreaming and sleeping. I am referring to Dreamland by Edgar Allan Poe. I've talked about Edgar Allan Poe on this channel before many a time, but for those who might not know, he was a writer who lived in the 1800s, wrote a number of short stories, at least one novel, and a lot of poetry as well. Very sad man in his life, did not really achieve the success he expected until after his life, and he died relatively penniless or something like that. So very unfortunate for him, but people have since discovered his work and love it. And I always talk about him during this spooky month, October, as I've called it before. So this is another sort of spooky, atmospheric type poem that I found was worth talking about during the month of October, although it is pretty high quality and worth talking about outside of October too. But without further ado, let's talk about this poem. I will read it, do a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. Dreamland. By a route obscure and lonely, haunted by ill angels only, where an eidolon named Night on a black throne reigns upright, I have reached these lands but newly from an ultimate dim thule, from a wild, weird climb that lathe sublime, out of space, out of time. Bottomless vales and boundless floods, and chasms and caves, and titan woods, with forms that no man can discover, from the tears that drip all over, mountains toppling evermore into seas without a shore, seas that restlessly aspire, surging unto skies of fire. Lakes that endlessly outspread their lone waters lone and dead, their still waters still and chilly, with the snows of the lulling lily. By the lakes that thus outspread, their lone waters lone and dead, their sad waters sad and chilly, with the snows of the lulling lily. By the mountains near the river, murmuring lowly, murmuring ever. By the grey woods, by the swamp, where the toad and the newt encamp. By the dismal tarns and pools, where dwells the ghouls. By each spot the most unholy, in each nook most melancholy. There the traveller meets aghast, sheeted memories of the past, shrouded forms that start and sigh, as they pass the wanderer by. White-robed forms of friends long given, in agony, to the earth and heaven. For the heart whose woes are legion, 'tis a peaceful, soothing region. For the spirit that walks in shadow, 'tis is an El Dorado. But the traveller travelling through it may not, dare not openly view it. Never its mysteries are exposed to the weak human eye unclosed. So wills its king who hath forbid the uplifting of the fringed lid, and thus the sad soul that here passes beholds it but through darkened glasses. By a route obscure and lonely, haunted by ill angels only, where an eidolon named Night on a black throne reigns upright, I have wandered home but newly from this ultimate dim thule. So that was Dreamland by Edgar Allan Poe. In terms of analysis, there is quite a bit worth talking about in this poem. I do have to acknowledge that it is quite dark and atmospheric, very solemn even, kind of sad, painting a very interesting picture of a land that we can't quite make it to. Only some people are able to achieve it. Like you see that at the beginning of the poem, he says, by a route obscure and lonely, haunted by ill angels only. What does that mean? Ill angels? Like demons in particular? Or just angels that don't mean you particularly well? It's a bit unclear there. He also says, an eidolon named Night on a black throne reigns upright. I have reached these lands but newly from an ultimate dim Thule. And Thule, I had to look that up. That was a land that was believed to exist in the far north in ancient times. And eventually I think people sort of established it as like Greenland or one of the northern Svalbard islands or something like that. An island that you couldn't easily get to in ancient times. And this is kind of like dreamy too, because it's described as out of space and out of time. They're bottomless vales and boundless floods, and chasms and caves and titan woods, with forms that no man can discover for the tears that drip all over. And so it does feel kind of fantasy-like, dream-like. And there are parts of this poem that suggest that this is a dream, that a person is only there because they're asleep. And that's not really a big guess, because it is called Dreamland after all. And there's another poem by Poe that is precisely sort of described as what you might see in your dreams, a place that you can't quite achieve or get to without being there. Now, it also does seem kind of haunted or even hell-like. Like this is the afterlife, because it says, by the lakes that thus outspread, their lone waters lone and dead, their sad waters sad and chilly with the snows of the lulling lily. By the mountains near the river, murmuring lowly, murmuring ever. And it says, by the dismal tarns and pools where dwell the ghouls. So kind of a fantasy world, but also this seems like Hades. This seems like a non-heaven type of afterlife, where it's just more of the same but kind of depressing, and you're just wandering around, and only like heaven is like worthy of the the achieved, or so to speak, because Valhalla, that's described as like a heaven but only for the worthy soldiers. So the rest of us get Hades, the rest of us get the hell, just a regular afterlife, and we get diet afterlife, so to speak. I do like this poem for how haunted it seems, and it does kind of follow a simple rhyme scheme where he rhymes one line with the next line. He says, floods, woods, discover over evermore shore, aspire, fire. And then there are words that don't quite rhyme, but are meant to kind of sound like they rhyme. It adds to the sort of rhythmic, dreamlike nature of this poem. And I will note one final thing is, again, there is more to add about how this might be like an afterlife. Because as he says, for the heart whose woes are legion, 'tis a peaceful, soothing region. For the spirit that walks in shadow, 'tis an Eldorado. And I guess what he's trying to say there is, for those who just, who have suffered, this can be soothing. But for those who walk in shadow, those who might be evil, this is paradise for you. So again, it might be hell. It doesn't quite make sense to me, because if your woes are legion, you didn't cause those woes maybe. So why would hell feel like a soothing region? I'm not 100% sure. But even if we were to fringed out what this is, later in the poem he says, never its mysteries are exposed to the weak human eye unclosed, so wills its king who hath forbid the uplifting of the fringed lid, and thus the sad soul that here passes beholds it but through darkened glasses. Again, that does seem like a dream-like kind of thing, where we're not really meant to understand our dreams, and you're only seeing it through darkened glasses. Like, unless you're like of the region, you're not going to really figure out much about it. So there's a lot of mystery to this poem, and I think Poe is just describing like a typical dream that one might encounter here. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Dreamland by Edgar Allan Poe. A fun poem, certainly, very haunting, very timely for the spooky season. So, I'll put a link to it in the description. Go ahead and read it if you want to scare yourself, or you just want access to some sort of spooky poem for whatever reason. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. I would love to hear from you and have a discussion about this. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this poem or Poetry Thursday if they don't already know. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and dreamlike travels. Farewell.